Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm very excited to bring you a review for the brand new Transformers Studio Series 86, number 14, Voyager class Junk-Heap. Junk-Heap is the copyright-friendly name of the Junkion character Junkyard, and this figure is a heavy retool of the Studio Series Wreck-Gar toy, meant to resemble the Junkyard character from the concept art from Transformers the movie. Now, this is a second time a Junkyard toy has been made. There was one previously in the old Generations line, also under the name Junk-Heap. So there will be plenty of fodder for our group shots and comparisons. That being said, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Junk-Heap's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll check out the instructions. We'll see Junk-Heap himself in both vehicle and robot modes. During the review, we'll also get a look at his included backdrop. Naturally, I'll be doing those aforementioned group shots and comparisons. And then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Junk-Heap comes in what is now your standard Voyager packaging for Studio Series. And there's something different about this packaging. I don't know if you've picked up on it yet, but there is no plastic in the window. Look at that. So Studio Series has officially gone the way of Generations, specifically Legacy, in having these open window boxes. Previously, they had just made the windows smaller in some of the more recent releases, but now there's no plastic at all. So, as always, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully we won't find a bunch of Junk-Heaps missing heads and stuff. Of course, the good thing about these smaller windows is we get this really nice prominent artwork of Junk-Heap right here on the front, and I think it looks absolutely amazing. Very detailed, down to like all the little surface details on the spikes. Awesome drawing. We can see the Transformers branding, Transformers the movie logo, the character's number, his name, all that fun stuff. On the side, we get a real close-up of his face from this artwork. Then we get a different angle of the artwork right here. Then, of course, on the back, we get renders of Junk-Heap in both vehicle and robot modes. He takes 22 steps to transform. He comes with a backdrop that's called Junkion Dance Party, which I believe is the exact same one that came with Wreck-Gar, which would make sense. And then his flavor text down here reads, Junk-Heap leads the efforts to piece together the remains of Ultra Magnus. So that's pretty cool. I didn't realize he was prominently involved in that. I'll have to go back and rewatch the movie to see if I spot him. But that does give me some ideas for some good group shots. And yeah, that is the whole packaging. So it looks really good. I'm starting to like the smaller windows just because we get such awesome, like, prominent artwork right there on the front. Still not crazy about the lack of the clear plastic over it just to protect the toy. But no amount of complaint on my part is going to change that, so it's just something I'm going to have to, suck up and live with. Here's our instruction book for Junk-Heap. As usual, you get his name, your branding, his number, the render for the character right there. Then when we open this up, we get a how-to for placement of his accessories. Now this part is important to pay attention to because when I first looked at Wreck-Gar a few months back, I didn't realize at first that the wheels were two different widths, and that really matters. So in this case, it appears that the thicker wheel is going to go on his right leg and the thinner one on his left. Now that shouldn't matter too much functionally for the robot mode, just, as far as deciding, what the right placement is. When it comes to vehicle mode, though, you always want the thick wheel on the front, otherwise it won't work right. All right, this shows you his back-mounted storage for his little pinwheel axe, or how to have him hold it. And then we get straight to the transformation, which wraps all the way around to the back here. And this shows you the completed motorcycle mode with a quick little how-to for storing his axe on the back. So everything you need to get your Junk-Heap from robot to vehicle and vice versa. And now we get to see Junk-Heap's vehicle mode. And at first glance, it looks to be the same as Wreck-Gar's, but the more you pay attention, the more you start noticing subtle differences. You can see he's got these little blast shield things on the sides, which are different. They're added there that, they don't exist on Wreck-Gar. His forearm pieces, as a result, are differently molded. You can see the new robot shoulders here on the sides. His feet are different, though you can't tell that very well from here. And then even the cockpit area, while very similar, is actually retooled to be a fair bit wider. That's one, to set them apart from Wreck-Gar, but two, because you had to be able to fit the new head in there, because you got a new robot head. You'd also see that this front area, which forms a robot chest, is completely different, And instead of the two little gun barrels there, he just gets these pipes just kind of going from the center around to the sides. So there's actually quite a bit of retooling here, and it'll become even more obvious once you get into the robot modes. Functionally, he's the same as Wreck-Gar. He does, all the same stuff in this mode. He has the dual kickstands so that you can keep him nice and straight, where you can flip those up and roll him. And he rolls just fine. It just has this kind of, bouncing motion because of the little studs on the wheels. But the wheels contact, beautifully. Everything works the way it's supposed to. It is a pretty solid alien motorcycle mode. Now here is a shot of Junkheap with his Generations counterpart. And as you can see, these are very, very different takes on the character. Just like our new Studio Series Junkheap, this Generations 1 is a retool of his respective Wreck-Gar toy. Though he wasn't nearly as intricately retooled as this one. He's pretty much just a head swap. And you can see they're going for very different effects. With the Generations 1, they're still in kind of that classics mindset of reinventing characters rather than just recreating them. So he has a much more Earth-based vehicle mode, and as such ends up having a very, very different silhouette and robot mode. So you can see that while these are meant to be the same character, they look pretty much nothing alike. I mean, from the shape to the colors, they might as well be different characters. And then lastly, here's our comparison with the Studio Series Wreck-Gar. So you can see, same overall body shape, they're both pretty much doing the same thing. But then, those differences start to show themselves. As I mentioned, differently shaped cockpit area, different forearms, and blast shields. You can barely see them, but different feet there. And that different little front section, right? These are the little gun barrels I mentioned. He loses those, so in a way, he seems to be swapping out offense for defense, right? Because he doesn't have a ranged weapon in this mode, but he does get blast shields, which are pretty nice looking. And this blast shield does appear to have, what looks like some sort of a, laser rifle barrel or something on it. Though it's not very useful in this mode, it can be used in the robot mode. So overall, just, very similarly designed, but different enough to where it doesn't feel like, the exact same toy, which is good. That's what you always want in a retool, right? You want to feel like it's fresh and not just retreading the same old ground. And seeing these two together makes me wonder if we'll get an additional Junkion in the form of Scrap-Heap, who is one of the only other Junkions to actually get like his own individual character model for both alternate and robot modes. I mean, it's there, the tooling's there, you just gotta throw in some retooling. I imagine what they do is mix and match parts between the two of these, so he's kind of a blend of the two and then give him a new head. That's what I would imagine. Of course, I'd be happier if he just had all new tooling, but, we'll not hold our breath too much on that one. And I'm still waiting on a Detritus. Where is the obvious Hound recolor? We got our Siege Hound. Where's Detritus? He really would have fit in with these guys beautifully. Okay, now it's time to do our transformation. Now, normally, I only show the transformation for a certain mold one time, so as not to just, have too much repetition in the reviews and, make it feel like it's just being dragged out for time. However, the new tooling on Junkheap has necessitated some slight changes to the transformation, so I do want to cover that so you can just see, what's different. So the first thing you want to do, if you haven't already, is remove his axe weapon and just set it to the side. Then we are going to pop these little panels away from his feet, which now have tabs on the side, part of that new tooling. Just kind of pop them off, rotate them this way, trying not to contact the handlebars, to where they slide right over the little spikes on the forearms. This one could be a little tough because it wants to hit that handlebar, but luckily the handlebars are soft, so they can just kind of move out of the way. All right, so you get that. Then we are going to untab the feet from the underside. Push those kickstands back in if you haven't. Separate the legs a little bit. Pull this wheel out. Straighten the legs out. Put his feet, downward. Okay, then we're going to pull his arms away from these little tabs on the chest. Separate them. Get the wheel out from in between those. And we're going to swing these arm panels outward. Get them out of the way. We are going to pull this chest and head section down and out of the little cockpit section. So get all this kind of coming back to itself. Start folding everything up here. bring these back so that this cockpit can be folded in. So you're going to push the windshield down, push that whole cockpit section in there, and then straighten this back out. Close the whole chest area up. Make sure we do it right here. So collapse that in if I can. Okay, there we go. All together, and tab the chest onto the shoulders like so. Fix the arms. Get them all straighten back out. Flip the fists out. Okay, and get all this back together right here. All right, then you just push the handlebars down and out of the way, like so. All right, check it out. This is the base robot mode for Junkheap without any accessories. So from here is kind of a blank canvas, right? You can attach his wheels technically to any of the little spike areas on him. However, to set him apart from Wreck-Gar, he's given a different official placement. Instead of having this asymmetrical look where he has a tire on an arm and leg on one side of the body, he just gets the tires on both his legs. So as we said with the instructions, you take the fatter tire, plug it in here on the right leg, just pops in there in the little hole to the thinner tire here. All right, so now you got him dressed down proper. And then of course with his weapon, you can store it on his back. That little post like so, looking pretty cool, or you can have him hold it. So it just slides right into his hand. Get it in there. All right. Check him out. Our new Junkheap, aka Junkyard. This guy looks really, really cool. And while he is, a retool of Wreck-Gar, there's enough going on here to where he still looks like a very different character. And, the new tooling and the reconfiguration of his tires really helps sell that idea. Oh, I would like to also point out that it would help if I actually flipped his little horns out. Whoops. Yeah, so those fold back for transformation to get clearance, and then you gotta swing them out to the sides. So, yep, there we go. Now he's actually transformed right. So, looking pretty cool. Again, very different from Wreck-Gar in a lot of ways. Almost a completely different color palette. Like, they both use a lot of brown and red, but the browns and reds are in completely different places for most of them. In fact, I think the only place that they're, in the same spot are like the spikes, the axe, little nubs on the tires. I think that's about it. So in a lot of ways, he's really doing his own thing. His posability is still really great. He's got those universal shoulders, the bicep swivel, the bending elbows that they're single bend, but they get a good 90. He has the wrist swivel, which is pretty rare for a Transformer whose fists flip out from a cavity. He's got a ball jointed head, full waist articulation. He's got his universal hips, and his little saddlebags can lift up to get out of the way of those legs lifting. He's got his thigh swivel, bending knees, which go to a little bit less than a 90. And then he's got his ankle tilt, which, like Wreck-Gar, his ankle tilt's really weird looking. It basically looks like his foot splits in half to achieve it, which is something that, I kind of point out at Wreck-Gar, saying it's a little bizarre. Not bad per se, but just a weird breakup in that particular part. You would think this whole area would move, but for whatever reason, I don't know, out of necessity or what, they told it to where the foot just kind of splits right there and then, bends outward. So not really sure why they did that. Oh yeah, I want to talk about the blast shields, right? So they're on his forearms now, bulking those out. And then this one has what does appear to be some sort of blaster barrel on the end of it. It's not really, advertised or emphasized, but I'm pretty sure that is a weapon of some kind. So he ends up being, I don't know, a little more formidable looking in this mode than Wreck-Gar does. I mean, granted, Wreck-Gar does have gun barrels on his chest, but they don't look nearly as cool as this thing right here. So, yeah, I really like this guy. I think he came out very, very well in both modes. Here's our Junkion dance party backdrop. And I will say the amount of detail that went into this art looks pretty painstaking. When you just see all the different panels and pieces lying around with their surface details. And then, of course, you got the ship flying in the background. I mean, it may not be the most dynamic backdrop out there, but it is really well done. And honestly, I applaud whoever took the time to draw this, because I know that was no quick feat. So, let's go ahead and place Junkheap on here, so we can see how he looks. And he fits on here quite well. I have a bit of an angle, so his foot's kind of sticking off, but if you have him just standing straight forward, it works even better. And yeah, I mean, he really just works against this backdrop. Probably even more so than Wreck-Gar, because the oranges of Wreck-Gar's coloration kind of make him blend in with the background, whereas Junkheap is primarily gray, and you don't see a lot of gray here, surprisingly, because Junkion, for whatever reason, is, you know, more of a rust color than, you know, just regular metal. So yeah, I think this really works for him. And if you like to use the backdrops to display your Studio Series toys, I think this is one of the better ones, because he really just pops against it, but at the same time looks like he belongs here. Okay, here's our first robot mode comparison with the Generations Junkheap. And like I said, very different looking robot modes. The transformations have nothing to do with each other at all. They end up looking completely different from one another. And even the head, through a combination of some artistic license with things like the, you know, Fu Manchu looking mustache, and the fact that his little clear piece, which forms the back of the head, the horns, and the eyes, is actually the wrong one. On this toy, they ended up using Scrap Head's little clear eye, or sorry, Scrap Heap's little clear eyepiece instead of Junkyard or Junkheap's, which is why he looks a little off. He's supposed to have horns that look, you know, more like his, with just like the long corkscrew-like horns sticking out to the sides. But they screwed it up at the factory level, and the only version of this toy that actually has the correct horns is the Shattered Glass version from the Collector's Club. So yeah, bit unfortunate there that he doesn't really have all the right parts he's supposed to. Still a very cool toy, don't get me wrong. The Reveal the Shield Wreck-Gar / Generations Junkheap / Scrap Heap, whatever you want to call them all. Really fantastic figure. Especially the versions that don't have the QC issue of breaking the handlebars like the Wreck-Gar version does. But as much as I like this thing for its uniqueness and, you know, just general quirky, disheveled nature that is befitting of a Junkion character, I like this Voyager Class 1 10 times more. He is just so clean looking. And I don't mean clean like, you know, lacking little odds and ends sticking out everywhere, because he has plenty of those. But he looks good. He looks like he jumped right out of the screen, and I absolutely love the way this turned out. It's just a very different take compared to this one. And personally, if I wanted to display these two together on a shelf and have like a bunch of different Junkions, I would just call this guy something else, or just make him a you know, generic Junkion, since he doesn't actually look like Junkyard anyway. So yeah, while this figure and its mold mates will always have a special place in my heart, I think we've definitely come a long way in the preceding years. And of course, we had to get our Wreck-Gar comparison in, and this is where the differences between the two really shine. Now, the wheel placement is an optional thing. Like, there is a correct placement, like a Canon one, but you can put them anywhere, so I don't really count that as a difference. You can see the heads are completely new pieces, like have nothing to do with each other. So are the little chest pieces here, where it's just all fully remolded. The forearms are all different pieces with very different detailing on them. And then, of course, these have the blast shields attached to them. And then the feet, specifically, actually really both halves of the feet, lower and upper, are all different pieces. Now, what's interesting, you know what? I take that back. The bottom part is the same piece. It's the upper part that's different. Not only are the designs different, but you can see this is where the tab is. So yeah, it's the upper half of the feet specifically that are different between these two. So you get all that. You get the shoulders, which are completely new. And I really like his shoulders more. They're much less plain looking than Wreck-Gar's. Wreck-Gar's, I know they're just really lacking in surface detail. I feel they could have upped that a little bit. And then, of course, the cockpit area, or what is now the backpack. You can see that, well, I guess it's not super obvious. You can kind of see hints of it right here. That is a different piece. This overall piece, I believe, is exactly the same, like the outer one. Don't think there's any difference. I don't know. Is that one wider? You know what? Really got to start like looking before I speak, huh? Because I think, hard to tell, but I believe that this piece may be a wider piece than this one. I could be wrong though. I'm not 100%. That might be a retool piece. So either way, a lot of differences between these guys. And then of course the color differences, like not just in the colors used, but the layout of them. It's all completely different. One thing that I do like about Junkheap compared to Wreck-Gar is that both halves of his feet use the same color plastic, so the whole split foot thing isn't quite as obvious. I think it just kind of works in his favor there. Like, it's a small difference, but one that I find just benefits him a little more. So yeah, these guys, I mean, there's so much give and take between them. Like, whereas he might gain some additional coloring, like with the little circle on his stomach, he might lose some. Whereas, you know, he lost the paint applications on the shins that Wreck-Gar has. And I think that's great. I love how the paint apps are in like all these different places, and everything just comes together to make this guy such a unique release from his, you know, base mold mate. So yeah, really just 100% loving how this turned out. And seeing him next to Wreck-Gar, I just think he looks so cool because at a quick glance, they don't look like the same toy. And this prospect's got me really excited for the potential for other Junkions down the road. Whether they're using, you know, this base mold, because I imagine we could very well get a scrap heap from this mold. Or, like I said before, detritus. We need him. Now, he will look a little odd being so much smaller than these guys, but Wreck-Gar is a leader character, so maybe it won't matter too much that he's tiny. So I don't know what the holdup is with that. You'd think that'd be like easy money on the table for Hasbro. Maybe they just haven't found a place for it. Maybe he hasn't been on the radar, or maybe they're waiting for an Earth mode Hound. Because Hound is one of the few Autobots that was released in Siege with like a specifically alien alt mode that never did get an Earth mode update. And it's almost becoming kind of conspicuous now. So maybe they are waiting for that potential like Hound retool or redo down the road. Though honestly, I would think that his more alien alt mode would make sense because these guys don't have strictly, you know, Earth-based alt modes either. They're just made out of whatever, you know, there to cobble together. Now, I want to show you guys something really cool. We covered it in the Wreck-Gar review, but I didn't have multiple copies to really show this off properly. So this mold is designed to ride itself, or, you know, any variation of itself. And you can see here, on the little seat area on our Wreck-Gar, there's this little tab. And then if you look at the underside of his pelvic region, there's a little slot. Well, I guess you can imagine what goes where, right? So go ahead, kind of get the little saddlebags up, out of the way. Now, I haven't tried this before, so I might take some fiddling to really get all the limbs where they need to go. But you want to get that slot over the tab and just kind of push it on there if you can. Oh, let's see here. Oops, there goes his axe. Maybe like maybe do the splits or something. I should be able to get on there. I just need to adjust that. Doesn't work very well, does it? Interesting. I think it's because this little area right here wants to collapse down when you put weight on it, so you just need to be very careful to not let it. Let's see. Well, that's really disappointing. It appears that the pelvic region really doesn't lock in solidly at all. Like, it's really just kind of a guide, I suppose, to keep him from flopping around too much. But it doesn't actually attach firmly to where, you know, if you move him, he's not going to flop right off. So that's disappointing. I really thought that was going to work better than it does. Man, what a letdown. I mean, it's still cool. It's great that, you know, he can still ride like some version of himself. It's still a little small for him because, I mean, you know, imagine if your motorcycle was just you folded up. It wouldn't quite be big enough. So it is a cool feature. Unfortunately, I do find the execution to be a bit lacking. For completion's sake, here's a shot of Wreck-Gar riding Junkheap. So, you know, the tables will turn here. I don't really know which one I like more, since they are, you know, mostly the same mold. Each one kind of looks equally as cool. And neither one really works better than the other. They both, just kind of mildly sit on that little tab without actually locking in. I really wish they locked in, because then you could really play with your thing, right? You could act like a kid and go vroom, 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 drive it around. He's not going to fall off. But unfortunately, it does seem that for both of them, this configuration is more about display than play. And because I said I would, here's a quick shot of Junkheap, aka Junkyard, fixing Ultra Magnus after he got just completely blown apart by the sweeps. Funnily enough, the Junkion's ability to just basically fix any Transformer with magic glue was one of the biggest plot holes in season 3 and beyond of Transformers, because if they had that ability, there were so many characters that died that could have just been brought back. But it only really popped up when it was convenient for the writers. So yeah, cool idea, just severely underutilized and kind of just got ignored half the time so that, there could be stakes in the show. And this completes our look at Studio Series Junkheap. I never thought I'd say this, but I think I actually like him more than Wreck-Gar. He's just got an extra cool factor to him, whereas Wreck-Gar, Wreck-Gar is a silly character, right? He's the goofy joke character. He's got the silly goatee going on. And then Junkheap here, he takes the same base design, but just makes it so much cooler. It's more armored. It seems to have, better armaments than Wreck-Gar, at least less ridiculous looking ones. He's got the big shoulder spikes, and he's just got a much more serious looking face. He looks like a bot you would not want to mess with, like a true road warrior. So I think he actually tops Wreck-Gar out a little bit. Plus, I like the colors a little more, too. I think Wreck-Gar's got a little bit too much orange on him. Not saying that Wreck-Gar's, bad or dethroned as, the best Wreck-Gar or anything like that, because he is still a phenomenal toy and the best Wreck-Gar we ever had. But I think this Junkheap just, honestly, outdoes him a little bit. He does have a little bit more in the way of parts count and all that. And he's just a really fun toy. I think, his motorcycle mode's a bit more fleshed out looking. So, yeah, I think he kind of takes the cake for me as far as Voyagers. Now, one thing I will say is a bit disappointing is the whole motorcycle riding gimmick. I was really expecting more there. And I didn't want to go and buy 2 Wreck-Gars to test it out, way back when. So you saw me struggling with my first attempt to actually make this happen and realizing that they don't actually lock in place and that he's just kind of resting on that little tab there was very, very disappointing, because I wanted to be able to do all kinds of cool poses and all that fun stuff. And I'm sure people that want to have a nice intricate display and maybe have him, doing a jump or something, you're going to realize it's not going to work. So, yeah, it was a very exciting prospect. But then, when you finally get to test out, you realize the execution just isn't there. So that might be, my one negative thing to say about this toy is just the interaction is a bit of a dud compared to where, my expectations, I think other people's expectations were. But aside from that, just as a standalone figure, I think he is amazing. I highly recommend picking this guy up. He's starting to show up in stores right now. I got mine online, but sure enough, as soon as mine shipped, they started having sightings across the country and even in my home state. So yeah, I think if you can get a hold of him, which shouldn't be too hard. Maybe it is, because he might be considered an army builder. I'm not sure how many people are going to army build this guy, but if you can get one, I think he's well worth the price. A real good improvement on an already just phenomenal Voyager class mold. So you pick him up, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Of course, that is just how I feel about Junkheap. Now I want to know what you all think of him. Are you excited for this guy? Do you think that he is indeed an improvement over Wreck-Gar? Or do you not really care either way whether he's better or not? You just want to get another Junkion? Or is this something that you don't want? Maybe you don't care about generics or troop builders. Maybe you're not a fan of the Wreck-Gar mold. Not my fault you have bad taste, but maybe you're not. Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this very exciting look at the new Transformers Studio Series 86 Voyager class Junkheap. With all that said, I will see you next time.